Agni is the Rigvedic deity of fire and the conveyor of sacrifices to the gods. He is also a god of divine knowledge, who leads man to the gods. He was one of the most important of the Vedic gods. Etymology: the word Agni is Sanskrit for fire, cognate with Latin ignis, Russian, Polish ogień, Slovenian ogień, Serbian oganj, and Lithuanian unis, all with the meaning fire, with the reconstructed Proto-Indo-European root being He-acute-Gni. Agni has three forms: fire, lightning, and the sun. Stolas-Thevi informs us that Agni is the drying agent which neither wets nor moistens anything. Akarbuni tells us that the word Agni is derived from three verbs: from going, from shining or burning, and from leading. The letter A is from root I, which means to go. The letter G is from the root Anj, meaning to shine, or Da, meaning to burn. And the last letter is by itself the root Ni, which means to lead. Jaskacharya explains that the fire god is called because he is the forward leader, who is the ever-awake disseminator of knowledge and the first principle of thought which manifests as speech. It is carried at the front in all ritualistic undertakings. Pippalada, the sage of the Prashta Upanishad, merely highlights the status of Agni when he tells Kabandi Katayana that very one, Surya, who is Aditya, rises up, who is Prana and Agni, who is identified with all creatures and who is possessed of all fame. Origins: the Rigveda often says that Agni arises from water or dwells in the waters. The Vedic sage says that Agni manifesting in the waters and seated in the lap of the winding waters, flaming upward, increases, and that Agni was born by the prowess of Tvashtr. He may have originally been the same as Apam-Napat, the supreme god of creation, who is also sometimes described as fire arising from water. This is the important physiological phenomenon in any living body, which in a natural explanation may have referred to flames from natural gas or oil seepages surfacing through water, or as the 7 rays or 7 bands of light of a rainbow. Other Rigvedic names, epithets, or aspects of Agni include Matarishvan, Jatar Vedas, or Bharata. Vedic conception of Agni. Agni is the god of fire and sacrifice, of divine knowledge, and is also associated with water. Agni, identified with energy and action, is the first emanation and the sacred spark hidden within all beings. Agni is second only to Indra in the power and importance attributed to him in Vedic mythology, with 218 out of 1028 hymns of the Rigveda dedicated to him. With Varuna and Indra he is one of the supreme gods in the Rigveda. Vedic god of fire and sacrifice. Sacrificial fire and high priest Agni is the personification of the sacrificial fire. He is associated with Vedic sacrifice, taking offerings to the other world in his fire. He is the priest of the gods, and the god of the priests. Through yajna he carries the oblations to the gods, to ensure the continuance of conditions favorable to mankind. No god is approachable without the medium of Agni, and no divinity is without the presence of Agni. Agni is the chief terrestrial deity personified by the sacrificial fire, which is the center of the ritual poetry of the Rigveda. The earth enveloped in darkness and the sky become visible when Agni is born. The acquisition of fire by man is regarded as a gift of the gods. Agni is only compared and not identified with the sun. Agni as the immortal guest is the witness of all actions, supremely powerful, all-consuming and unresistible, but who commands all earthly and heavenly riches, i.e., all temporal good. Agni is the receiver, holder and distributor of energy, who leads the Devatas to victory in the battles against the Asuras, and confers wealth of various kinds to the performers of yajnas. Born in the human aspirant, he awakens the gods, and burns the opposing foes, the demons. Jataveda and Kravyada. Agni has two forms, Jataveda and Kravyada. Jataveda is invoked to burn and carry the offerings to the respective gods, in which case Agni is light identified with knowledge and with Brahman. Kravyada is invoked to burn the flesh in the Pitri Yajna, for which purpose Agni is obtained from the rays of the sun. In the Jataveda form, he who knows all creatures, Agni, acts as the divine model for the sacrificial priest. He is the messenger who carries the oblation from humans to the gods, bringing the gods to sacrifice, and interceding between gods and humans. When Agni is pleased, the gods are generous. Agni represents the cultivated, cooked and cultured aspects of Vedic ritual. Together with Soma, Agni is invoked in the Rigveda more than any other gods. Kravyada is the form of Agni which eats corpses, the fire of the funeral pyre. The fire that eats corpses can eat everything. This is the impure form which is much feared. In this form, after one's death and at the time of cremation, Agni heats up and burns the body only, the body which is the impure human condition. Knowledge. Agni is Abhimani, from Sanskrit abhi plus man, meaning dignified, proud, longing for, thinking. Agni is the mystic fire who leads man on the journey to God. Agni is worshipped as the symbol of piety and purity, as expression of two kinds of energy, i.e., light and heat. He is the symbol of life and activity. Agni Rahasya, the secret of fire, is the key to all knowledge because Agni is the power of inner and outer illumination. Water. Agni is also called Arka, water, the accessory to worship, and the cause of fire that covers all food, which covers all life. Rishi Tritapti, in a mantra in praise of Agni, refers to the bearers of water, the most subtle and the most refined aspects of manifestations. In a subsequent mantra he says that in the conditions prevalent prior to the formation of water, Agni, which was the first visible manifestation of the unmanifested, was the giver and the taker, both because as energy it had transformed into matter, beginning with water. Textual appearance. Vedas. In the Vedic pantheon, Agni occupies, after Indra, the most important position. Agni occupies a prominent place in the Vedas and particularly the Brahmanas. In the Rigveda there are over 200 hymns addressed to and in praise of Agni. Agni is the Rishi of Sukta x. 124 of the Rigveda, and along with Indra and Surya makes up the Vedic triad of deities. Agni is the first word of the first hymn of the Rigveda revealed to Rishi Madhu at Chanda Vaishvamita in Gayatri Mita. This mantra is a prayer to Agni. I aspire intensely for Agni, the adorable, the leader who carries out the yajna, who does and gets done the yajna in due season, who is the summoning priest capable of bringing the gods to the yajna performed here, and the one who establishes excellent felicities in the aspirants. In the Rigveda, a rishi prays for the 10 eternal powers to bless Devashtr with the birth of Agni, which is a reference to the 10 undisclosed powers that nourish Agni. Shatapada Brahmana tells us that Prajapati was generated through the tapas of the rishis. Thereafter, through his own tapas, Prajapati generated all the gods and all the creatures. He also generated Agni as the sacrificial fire and as the second self, having wearied himself his glow and essence of him heated up and developed. Agni, richly Agni, as the altar built by the sacrifice, reconstitutes Prajapati. Upanishads. The Isha Upanishad focuses on the tradition of Agni as the divine will and action. The sage of this Upanishad surrenders the lower egoistic human nature and prays to Agni to guide and lead him to that, the establishment, origin, and refuge of all that is. In the Kena Upanishad, Agni reveals his identity as the heat energy and the ever-burning flame of the conscious force in matter. that makes up the entire world. The gods sent first Agni to find out the nature of Brahman, which means it is Agni that releases the energy which is latent in all beings. Moreover, the sage of the Kena Upanishad refers to the functional differentiation and specialization of body parts, on which account the life stream progresses when he speaks of Agni becoming the speech and entering the mouth, and Vayu becoming breath and entering the nostrils. The Katha Upanishad tells how Yama taught Nachiketa the secrets of the fire that leads to heaven, and what bricks were required to build the altar. The Chandogya Upanishad describes the Panchagni Vidya, the meditation on the 5 fires. It explains the interconnectivity of everything that exists with creation as a kind of sacrifice. Each manifestation, the microcosm, is a manifestation of Prakti, the macrocosm. Depiction. Iconography in Hindu scriptures. Agni is depicted with 2 or 7 hands, 2 heads and 3 legs. One head marks immortality, and the other marks an unknown symbol of life. He rides a ram or chariot harnessed by fiery horses. Agni is represented as red and two-faced, suggesting both his destructive and beneficent qualities, and with black eyes and hair, 3 legs and 7 arms. He rides a ram, or a chariot pulled by goats or, more rarely, parrots. Agni has 2 mothers, or has 2 parts of the fire drill used to start the fire. He has 10 servant maids. The fingers of the man who is lighting the fire are the 10 undisclosed powers that nourish Agni. 7 rays of light emanate from his body. One of his names is Saptajiva, the one having 7 tongues. He has 7 fiery tongues with which he licks the sacrificial butter. In the Mundaka Upanishad it is said that Agni, Hyamat the Ahavaniya fire, has 7 tongues of flames: Kali, Karali, Manojava, Suloita, Sudumravana, Sphilingwini and Vishwaruchi. The ancient seers divided Agni into 3 parts: Garhapatu, Ahavaniya and Dakshinani. Jaska states that his predecessor Sakapuni regarded the threefold existence of Agni as being in earth, air and heaven as stated by the Rigveda, but a Brahmana considered the third manifestation to be the sun. Cultural artifacts. In the collection at Bharat Kala Kendra, there is a 1st century CE, red sandstone sculpture identifiable as Agni shown in the garb of a Brahmin, very much like sage Kashyapa on the Govindanaga Asaya Singadorjam. In the Panchala coins of Agnimitra there is deity with a halo of flames. On Kushana coins there is engraved an Iranian deity under the name of Athos. In Gupta sculptures, Agni is shown as a Brahmanical deity with a halo of flames round the body and also with a beard, pot-bellied and holding Amtargita in his right hand. Legends. Birth. Agni is the eldest son of Brahma. In the Vishnu Purana, Agni, called Abhimani, is said to have sprung from the mouth of the Virat Purusha, the cosmic man. In another version, Agni is the son of Dharma and Vasubharya. A sage of the Rigveda states that the sun became visible when Agni was born. In some Hindu symbolism, Agni's parents are said to be the 2 components of the fire drill used to start the fire, and when young he was said to be cared for by 10 servants who are represented by the 10 fingers of the man who starts the fire. Agni hid from the gods, but Atharvan found him and raised him, thus combining the divine and the human worlds, transforming the sublime and the subtle to the gross and the material. Ascension and family. At the command of Bhrigu, Agni was brought down from the heavens for man's use by Matarishvan. In the later writings, Agni is described as a son of Angiras who happened to discover fire and its uses. Agni married Svaha and fathered 3 sons, Pavaka, Pavamana and Uchi, who in the turn had 45 children, all different aspects of fire. Agni's three sons, according to the Vayu Purana, stand for three different aspects of Agni. Pavaka is the electric fire, Pavamana is the fire produced by friction, and Uchi is the solar fire. Every fire has a corresponding relation to one of the human psychic faculties. They also represent body, spirit and soul, and body. Abhimani, his three sons, and the 45 sons constitute the 49 mystic fires of the Puranas, especially the Agni Purana. Agnya is the daughter of Agni and the Hindu goddess of fire. Meda is Agni's sister, purifier. Offended by Agni, Bhrigu had cursed Agni to become the devourer of all things on this earth, but Brahma modified that curse and made Agni the purifier of all things he touched. The Kandava forest. In the Kandava Dahapava, Agni in the guise of a Brahman is seen to approach Krishna and Arjuna seeking sufficient food for gratification of his hunger, and on being asked about the kind of food which would gratify, Agni expressed the desire to consume the forest of Kandava protected by Indra for the sake of Takshaka, the chief of the Nagas. Agni wanted to regain his own nature, which had been dulled by the sacrifice of King Svetaki, who had poured clarified butter for 12 years into a fire. Aided by Krishna and Arjuna, Agni consumed the Kandava forest, which burnt for 15 days, sparing only Aswasyana, Maya, and the 4 birds called Saurangakas. Later, as a boon, Arjuna got all his weapons from Indra and also the bow, Gandiva, from Varuna. Kartikeya. The Puranas associate with Agni the origin of Kritika Nakshatra and the birth of Kartikeya. It is said that Agni received Shiva's energy from Parvati as alms that he had to share with others, being the carrier of all oblations to the gods. Agni gave this energy to the 6 wives of the Saptarishis, who wanted to warm themselves, and for this they were cursed by the husbands to become Nakshatras, the 6 Nakshatras that make up the Kritikas, the third of the 27 lunar mansions. Thereafter, these 6 wives gave the energy they had received from Agni to the Himalayas, which then flowed down as one to be distributed to the reeds from which the 6-headed boy, Kartikeya, was born. Another version of this legend states that Kartikeya was initially born from Shiva and Parvati's combined power as an effulgent orb of energy, so radiant so as to burn the universe. Agni stole it so as to keep the child safe and kept running across the universe to escape the vile Asura Taraka, who was to be destroyed by Kartikeya. Parvati awoke from her meditative state and found out that her son was missing. She was enraged and came rushing out of the cave, to which she encountered the Devas and the preceptor, Brihaspati. They informed her that Agni had taken her son and only did so to ensure the son's protection. This made Parvati extremely furious and she attained her Adishakti form, which caused lightning and all other calamities to begin on earth. In anger, she cursed the Devas that the wives would be infertile and never enjoy parental happiness. Furthermore, she cursed Agni that he would be an all-consumer, adding that he would be unable to differentiate between pure and impure and that all who touched him would turn into ash, and because of the impurities in his food, he would be surrounded by thick black smoke forever. At the nick of time, Shiva came out of the cave and calmed down Parvati, promising her that he himself would find the son. She assumed her normal form and went back inside the cave. Shiva later found Agni and blessed him that despite Parvati's curse, he would always be holy. King Shibi. There is the story about King Shibi who was tested by Agni assuming the form of a pigeon and by Indra assuming the form of a hawk. Shibi offered his own flesh to the hawk in exchange of pigeon's life. The pigeon which had sought Shibi's shelter was thus saved by the king's sacrifice. Fire ordeal. Agni Pariksha, or the fire ordeal, has Agni as the witness. Sita was forced to undergo this ordeal to prove her virtue. Agni redeemed the original Sita from the wrath and condemnation of her husband and her community. Rituals. Vedic rituals all involve Agni. Agni is present in many phases of life, such as honoring of a birth, prayers, at weddings and at death. Agnihota Yajna, sacrificial fire. The Agnihota is the sacrificial fire. Agnihota is believed to free the Yajmana from evil and death, both signified by Agni. Prajapati had to create milk as food for the hungry Agni and perform the first act of Agnihota to avoid death and preserve his own existence. Vedic times, the Agnihotis once maintained a perpetual fire in the homes. This ritual ceremony was conducted on important and auspicious occasions. In many homes, prayers are still offered to Agni. The sage of the Atharva Veda prays to the fire for happiness and peace, for a happy temperament, resolve and good health, for strength and mental contentment, and as the ladder to spirituality. The sage also states that Agnihota destroys enemies. Shatapada Brahmana tells us that Agnihota should be performed by the performer, knowing that he will gain the strength and victories gained by Agni, who conquered the earth, Vayu, the air, and Surya, the sky, with whom he shares the world. And the same text further tells us that the Agnihota, doubtless, is the sun. Contemporary fire ritual Hindus consider it as the duty of a man to perform Agnihota. The main offering is milk, and at the end, the sacrificer offers 4 water oblations, to the gods, to Father and the fathers, to the 7 seers and to Agni on earth. The priest invokes Agni through Agni in his sacrificial form. The sacrificial form of Agni is the sun which shining brightly appears to all men. The priest also invokes Vayu, which is Agni's own greatness. Therefore, Agni as the deity is treated differently from Agni, the messenger who carries oblations to the gods. The sacrificial form of Agni is Aditya and Vayu. Ritual versus knowledge. Shankara in his commentary on the Brahma Sutras states that the rightful observance of the Agnihota and other rites are meant for those desirous of attaining heaven and other enjoyments, and the understanding of the rightful doctrine of the soul is meant for those desirous of emancipation. Pasubandha, animal sacrifice. During Vedic times, Pasuyajna, animal sacrifices to procreate Agni, were frequently made. The animal to be sacrificed was tied to an octagonal wooden stake called yapa, be it a goat, a horse, or a bull. The entire ceremony was supervised and coordinated by an advari. Because this ritual called from the completeness of the sacrifice to meet the demands of the liturgical rules, Nirada Pasubandha Yajna involving immolation of a he-goat was an obligatory rite performed once in 6 months or once a year with the aid of 6 priests to appease Indra and Agni, with Surya and Prajapati as deities. The Rigveda does not make a direct reference to animal sacrifice, but in Rigveda Mantra 8.43.11, which is addressed to Agni, Rishi Varuparanjarasa invites all devout to pray to Agni, who is called Ukshana and Vasana, that is, the eater of bulls and barren cows. The Shatapada Brahmana speaks about the 5 animals as sacrificial victims: man, bull, horse, ram, and he-goat, which Agni enters and becomes. The same text explains that it is Agni who is sacrificed as animal victim. Agni Ravasya. The secret of fire is the esoteric interpretation of the fire altars. The fire altars are reinterpreted as symbolic representations of the mind and its connection, the absolute reality. In these interpretations, various meanings are strings together to reach a new understanding. Fire altars. The terrestrial world, the air, the sky and the sun are spoken of as the fire altars, with all things on and in them as various bricks, making up the whole of Agni. The 10th book of the Shatapada Brahmana says that the fire altar is the mind, and that the mind is prior to breath and speech. It also describes the benefits of the Vijapaya and the Rajasuya sacrifices, identifies the person residing in the sun with the person residing in the right eye, and proclaims the meditation on Brahman as the mind. Turakavashaya. The Shatapada Brahmana and the Aitareya Brahmana speak of Turakavashaya, the teacher of the Agni Rathasuya doctrine, who built a fire altar to the gods at Karoti. He was the Purohit of Janamejaya, son of Parikshit, to whom the Mahabharata was recited. Turakavashaya had received this knowledge from Prajapati, who had in his own turn received it from the self-existent Brahman. This knowledge finally teaches that the Ashvamedha is the yonder shining sun, which is Agni, which is Brahman, the year is his body, Agni is Arka and the worlds are his bodies, and both Arka and Ashvamedha combine to become one deity, death. Knowing this, one conquers death. The fire of the mind. The Brahmana tells us that the mind saw itself as 36,000. It saw the adorable fires as belonging to itself, lighted up by the mind, and conceived as identical with the mental modes. There are 36,000 manovritis or mental modes, one for each day of life spanning 100 years, which correlates to the mind-generated bricks of the altar. The fire is lighted up by the mind itself, thus establishing mental connection to the prescribed Vedic ritual acts or rites. Badarayana and Jaimini both agree that the fires of the mind and speech of Agni Rathasuya are not parts of any concrete ritual, but refer to conceptual fires, which are meditations, which are not subservient to rites.